to another episode of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Craig.
And I'm Todd.
Todd let me pick the movie today, and I picked one that I've been wanting to do for a really long time.
Yes.
Today we are talking about 2015 film The Final Girls. Not to be mistaken for the also 2015 The Final Girl, which is also a good movie, but that's not what we're talking about today.
It's not as highly rated as this one,
right,
I see. But,
right. I saw this movie, I don't know, a few months ago, just one time, and I fell absolutely in love with it. I think within the first 10 minutes, my eyes were watery, my smile was just going from ear to ear because I knew exactly what kind of movie this was going to be, and I was absolutely in love. So, what did you think, Todd?
I have to admit, the same way. And Craig has been begging, actually, to do this movie for quite some time. But I didn't read a thing about it. In fact, I actually acquired the wrong movie initially. I got The Final Girl that you were talking about earlier without the S at the end. And it was this morning when I realized, oh, crap, I need to find the right one. I had no idea what it was about. I mean, I had this idea, probably had something to do with the Final Girl concept, but as the movie went on, I was like, probably about 15 minutes into it, I said, oh, I see where this is going, and was entirely pleased.
Yeah, oh gosh. It's just such a clever concept, and I'm just surprised that we haven't already seen this movie. I mean, it's really, it's clever, but... So I guess... The concept is, we start out with the trailer for a cheesy 80s slasher film, right?
Camp Bloodbath.
Camp Bloodbath, right.
They won't be singing Kumbaya. They'll be screaming Kumbano. Pack your bags for Camp Bloodbath.
You just messed with the wrong virgin.
Where the only marshmallow that will roast is your sanity.
And it's clearly a Friday the 13th ripoff, or homage, even better. It's terribly 80s and wonderfully 80s at the same time. I mean, it's exactly what we went to the theater for all those Friday the 13th movies.
It gets you in a good mood right off the bat,
right?
Doesn't it?
Yeah, bad acting, just all your classic tropes with the sex gets you killed and all that stuff.
Corny one-liners.
Oh, yeah. You all have seen Friday the 13th. You know what we're talking about. And the sequels, too. And then we cut, after the trailer, we cut to this scene with Taissa Farmiga and Malin Ackerman, two actresses who I am, huge fanboy fans of. Tasia is from, from a lot of things, but I know her primarily from American Horror Story. She was in the first season Murder House, and she was in Coven also, and she's wonderful in both. Malin Ackerman has been in lots of stuff. She's this gorgeous character actress who is so, stunningly beautiful in such a charming way, but also, ridiculously funny, too. And their mother and daughter. Malin Ackerman is the mom. She's an actress, Amanda Cartwright. But this is in present day, so she's known for her 80s roles, and she's having problems being taken seriously as an actress now. And she's gone, I guess, to an audition, and and her daughter, Max, Taissa Farmiga, is with her, and they're in the car, and they're talking, and it's really cute mother and daughter stuff back and forth, and Malin Ackerman says something like,
everything in my life I got wrong, but you I got right. I love you. You know that, right?
It's really sweet.
This exchange couldn't be sweeter, except it never got into the saccharine, ridiculous territory.
No, it was cute.
It was very believable as a mother-daughter kind of thing, and it was very touching. It was a great way to set up their relationship. It felt authentic to me.
Absolutely. And they're just driving along, and they're playing. It's really playful, and the song comes on the radio, Betty Davis Eyes, great 80s song, and Malin Ackerman's kind of lip syncing and dancing around. It's really cute. But Max, the daughter, spills her coffee, which distracts the mom, and they're in this terrible car accident. And I read online that the car accident was all done with CGI, but it looked great.
It looked fantastic.
I'm gonna gush over this whole movie because I just love everything about it.
Me too. This whole we're gonna have to look out for our equipment because we are gushing all over this film. My room will never be the same when we are finished with this. Oh my word. It was just so, and it was well filmed, I was just little moments of even this car sequence. I was going, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. After the car crashes, it's just night and there's nobody else there. Mm-hmm. It's like a car crash on a cold, wet, dark road in the middle of the night. And then the light just turns red.
Right.
It just clicks. Mm-hmm. Just these moments in this film are so good.
I agree 100%. And then we cut to how many 3 years later. It cuts to black 3 years later. Max is waking up in her bed, and we realize very quickly that her mother didn't survive the crash. But she's, a teenager now. Again, another thing, they make, in that opening scene, they make Taissa Farmiga look so young, and they make Malin Ackerman look so much, believably older than her.
They did a good job with that.
Then we get the setup. We meet her friends. We meet Max's friends. She's got this friend, Gertie, who is kind of the frumpy-ish but cute and funny one. And then there's Chris, who's the hot guy who Gertie is trying to hook Max up with. And there's Duncan, who's like the nerdy horror film guy.
Yeah.
Right? Duncan is what was the name of it? A mathematician. Which I guess is the club in their school that is like obsessed with these movies.
People who are obsessed with Camp Bloodbath franchise apparently.
Right, exactly.
Call themselves, yeah.
And he apparently has just realized that Max is the daughter of the star of this movie. And so he wants her to come to this showing. And she doesn't want to, but he says, I'll do all your homework for you. And so she agrees.
He works at, like, the theater, doesn't he?
I think so. Mm-hmm. And so she agrees to do it. And so all of the friends meet up at the movie theater. And, there's just the cool posters for Camp Bloodbath. It's all so throwback to the 80s. It's all so fun.
It really is. And yet they're really laying it on thick of present-day references.
Yeah.
You kind of notice that the one girl drives up. I think that's when we're first introduced to Vicki, which is her friend, who apparently they were better friends earlier and have grown apart a little bit because Vicki is that prissy, what would you call her? She's the girl who's...
She's the mean girl, kind of.
Mean girl, yeah.
I mean, she's, passive-aggressive. I mean, like, she's still kind of their friend, but...
Super hot and knows it. And,
right.
Kind of flaunts it and everything. And she pulls up and she starts making Twitter references. And later on, they're talking about Adderall. She says something about she's got her Adderall with her and all that, and it's like bam, 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 bam. But I actually liked that. I thought that was cool. It's funny, but and I don't know if it's just because writers tend to be just a little bit older. We're just now starting to see movies that feel like, okay, absolutely they take place present day.
Right,
you know what I mean? Everybody has a cell phone, sure, but everybody's referencing Twitter, and I expected a Snapchat reference in here somewhere, at some point. And that was cool. Like, it really puts the movie here, which is a perfect setup for later.
Right.
So it was very intentional, I'm sure, but it also, I consciously appreciated that. I don't know. I felt like this movie... I don't know. I felt like I was watching something that came out yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. It's a perfect juxtaposition. There's all kinds of funny... I mean, it's such a funny movie. It really, we got a little bit into it, and I almost felt like I had tricked Todd a little bit, because it's really... It is a horror film, but it's so much more than that, and really, like, there's... so much comedy. It's so funny. I mean, it's just laugh out loud funny, like 90% of the time.
Yeah, and it's funny how well it works. They're not trying that hard. I mean, there's so many movies that crack jokes that are so similar, but they're just not as funny as this movie is. And I don't know if it's a combination of the actor. I think it's a combination of delivery, the actors involved, the way it's presented. All together, this movie just works. It just gels so well.
And it just seems like the actors were having so much fun. Mm-hmm. And at the end, with the credits, they do a bloopers reel. And you can just see that these actors were playing and having so much fun. A couple of the actors, we haven't introduced the character yet, because he hasn't come up yet, but Kurt, Adam Devine, he's actually a musical theater kind of guy. Most people would probably know him from Pitch Perfect, but he's done stuff on Broadway and stuff too. He and the guy that plays Chris, I believe, were encouraged to ad-lib a lot of their lines, and they did, and a lot of it made it into the film, and you can tell. I mean, it's just, it's real, it's like fresh funny. It doesn't seem like super scripted, trying to sell jokes. It's hilarious.
It really is. And it also never goes into that territory that we've accused films of before where they're almost a little too clever.
Yeah.
Like, that line sounds so written.
Right.
People aren't really that witty in real life. This sounds like how people talk. How young, Craig and I hang around young people all day long, and we know how they talk.
Yeah.
This isn't really far from that, is it?
No, it's great. It's great. It's really fresh. It's really clever.
Hey! What a coincidence. This is Tyson. We've been hanging out, and he's so funny. My abs are, like, shredded from laughing so hard. Anyway, Tyson wanted to come here tonight, and I was like, oh my god, no, but... And here we are, so... You win, Tyson.
So you didn't see my post about it or anything?
No, I don't go on your stupid Twitter, which, by the way, has lost 3 more followers today. Anyway, I'll see you guys inside, okay?
So they're at the movie, and the movie's playing, and, there's lots of fun gags in the lobby, like Duncan trips over the velvet rope, and just little gags like that. But they're watching the movie, and then there's this really cool sequence, almost like a Final Destination kind of sequence.
Yes, that was the vibe I was getting as well, where things are happening in the movie that they're watching. And it has to be said that obviously Max is a little hesitant. She's sort of happy to do it in a way, but this also happens to be the anniversary of her mom's death. Mm-hmm. And so obviously that's going through her mind, but it has been 3 years later, and her mom was in films. That's something that she's had to deal with her whole life. And I was thinking about that whole time. Wow, I don't know if anybody's ever really explored this topic, at least not much, but it's something that's fascinated me, and that is, what is it like to be immortalized as a character on the screen? But more so, what is it like for you as family to see a loved one immortalized on the screen, especially in this particular circumstance when they're no longer around?
Right.
And early on, without hammering you over the head with it, you see this problem. You almost know it's going to creep up again, right? And I didn't know a thing about the movie, and I still felt like, oh, this is a theme. This is something we're going to be exploring, and this is really interesting to me. But she plays it so well. She doesn't play it over. It's like, it just seems real.
Yeah,
it seems so real how the way it would be, and so. This is the point at which the world of the movie, at least a little bit, is paralleling the world of reality. It's starting to blur those lines before that actually happens 100%.
Right.
Well, like you said, it's this sort of Final Destination thing where there's somebody on screen, I think it's her mom's character, Nancy, lights a lighter, and in the meantime, somebody in the theater flicks a lighter to light a cigarette, which I'm not sure what movie it is. Okay, whatever. And then at the same time, somebody else in the movie, a little minute or two later, chugs like out of a bottle,
like a Jack Daniels or something.
Yeah, and somebody in the theater chugs a bottle out, and I'm thinking, where's this going? And it's this convoluted series of events where the bottle falls and rolls down and spills this alcohol all the way up to the curtain and underneath everybody. And then, of course, this guy's ash falls right down at just the inappropriate time, lights it all up, just as she is starting to walk out of the theater.
Right, because it's the point where her mom on film is about to get killed.
Yeah.
And so she gets up to, excuse herself, but then the theater just bursts into flames. And she looks back at her friends, and she runs back to them, and they can see that all the exits are blocked. But she asks Duncan, who works at the theater, is there a door behind the screen? And he says, yeah. And, this is one of those things, it's like a film... Not a film festival, but it's like a party, like people are dressed up, and somebody had like a machete, because the guy in the movie, Billy, the bad guy in the movie, kills people with the machete, and they drop it. So Max picks it up, and they run towards the screen, and she slices the screen open, and from behind it, there's this brilliant glow, and the friends all start going through, and Max takes one look back around, but then she goes through too. And then it's like the Wizard of Oz. I mean, it's just like the Wizard of Oz.
It's just like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, they wake up in this Technicolor world, and again,
it's unreal looking.
Yeah.
Immediately you can tell that it's unreal looking forest.
Right.
They're like flowers that are brightly colored, and you're conscious of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I was like, and at that moment I was like, I turned to Craig and I said, oh, it's going to be one of these kind of movies.
That was it. And that's the thing. Now they have entered into the movie. And, you know, they're standing there kind of in the forest and they hear a car coming and it's this, you know, like 70s VW van with the characters from the movie in it.
And we'd seen a scene earlier. We'd somehow just seen enough scenes from this movie to be able to draw parallels, whether it was from that trailer that we had seen at the beginning or whether it was from the little clips we were seeing with her in the movie theater, right?
Right. And so at first, like, the van pulls up and they're like, hey, Tina, in the van, the movie cast, we've got Kurt, who is supposed to be like the Lothario kind of guy, but it's also hysterically funny because, I mean, he's a good-looking guy, but he's not like your ripped, you know, hot guy that you would... which makes it even funnier.
He's like on the football team, kind of dude,
and he's just so hilarious. I don't even know. I mean, folks, you're gonna have to watch the movie to see. We can't possibly do it justice just talking about it. But so there's Kurt, and then there's Tina, who is kind of the dumb blondish one.
Yeah, so the slutty girl.
Right. I read they kind of based her character around the like PJ Souls character from Halloween. So many homages in this movie. I mean, we couldn't possibly list them all.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's why you and I enjoyed it so much is because we love these kind of movies, and to see somebody paying tribute to them while poking fun of it in a really good-natured way.
Yeah.
So much fun.
It's on a different level of this. It's different from like the Scream franchise.
Yeah.
You know, it's maybe more comedy than the Scream movies were.
Right.
But also hyper self-aware.
Yes.
But I don't know, man. I don't know why this movie was so much better than... There are other films that try to do this. You know, there are other films that try to poke fun. And maybe by the end of this podcast, I will have figured out the formula as to why this movie was way more fun than any of the rest of those.
Well, I think that part of it is because it's got so much humor. It is so hysterically funny. But it also has so much heart. And I think that that's hard to get in horror and in comedy. And to get a horror comedy that really has this much heart, because it really comes down to another one of the characters in the movie is Nancy, who is Malin Ackerman. But, of course, in the movie, she's the character. Yeah. She doesn't know that she's the mom. But right away... you realize that it's going to become this thing where Max is going to have an opportunity to interact with her mother again.
Yes.
And that mother-daughter thing, that vibe that plays through the whole thing, Max trying to look out for her, and eventually as time goes on, you know, they become close, and Nancy wants to look out for Max, and it's such a sweet dynamic, and the actresses are so good that it has so much heart. And I read that initially this was New Line wanted to license it, but they wanted to cut out all that sentimental stuff.
That is cutting out the whole heart of this film.
I know.
This movie would not... That's probably it, is what you're saying, is exactly it. If this film didn't have that as its emotional core, it wouldn't have been... It would have just been another, oh, haha, look at, we're poking fun of horror movies by mocking them and going over the top with certain things. But because of this emotional core of her reconnecting with her mother, getting a second chance to spend time with this loved one that she dearly misses, and then maybe even a way to save her, you know?
Right.
Oh my gosh, it was killing me.
And it's so surprising to me how they could balance those different tones, because you have this straight, almost slapstick comedy in so much of the movie, and then you'll have these moments between characters, like even in the movie theater, Chris and Max have this little moment where she's, you know, kind of saying it's kind of weird to be here to see the movie or whatever, and Chris just says, well, but isn't it nice to kind of be able to honor your mother's memory in this way? And she just kind of quietly concedes. You know, it's those sweet moments. And then later in the film, Max and Nancy have moments that are not entirely devoid of comedy, but that's not where the focus is. It's really on their relationship. And it's believable, and it's sweet to the point where you're going to cry, folks.
Yeah. I lost it a couple times during this movie.
I was trying not to, because I don't know, stereotypical horror fan, whatever. But, you know, I'm a sensitive guy. I get choked up about all kinds of things, and I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of Todd crying over this corny horror movie.
Little did he realize Or maybe he realized I'm over here like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, I hear him sniffing a little bit and rubbing his eyes, and I didn't want to look because I didn't want to be uncomfortable or whatever, but seriously, I mean, it's got that much heart to where it affects you on a surprising level, and I just love it. You know, through the whole movie, my face was just glowing, and you know, as soon as it was over, I love this movie.
Any film that can take you on an emotional roller coaster is what I would consider a successful film. You know,
Right.
Did I like the movie? Well, the answer to that question is, did it touch me?
Yeah.
And this movie touched me in so many places. It's just a joy when you can get a film that has you laughing out loud 1 minute and then just bawling your eyes out the next, and can bring you back then to that laugh out loud moment just a couple minutes later. You know, it just strikes the right balance.
Yeah, and so then, you know, what happens is they eventually realize, okay, we're in the movie, and there are so many clever things. Like, the van goes by several times before, and every time it goes by, it says 92 minutes later, the exact length of both the actual Camp Bloodbath film and this film, 92 minutes later.
And that's when Duncan puts two and two together. He's the guy, like, I can't remember the name of the character in Scream, who knows all the rule or whatever. And he instantly is like, sets his watch, and he realizes it's 92 minutes later, and he goes, oh, don't you guys realize we're in the movie? And so when they pull up that third time, Tina is like, you guys know the way to the camp? And he says, well, yeah, we're counselors there. And I can show you the way if you'll just give us a ride.
Yeah.
And so, okay, hop on in. So they all hop in. Which, and this is the one criticism, maybe just the only criticism really I have of the movie, is as soon as they get in the car and they're just driving along. And now we've seen this scene in the movie Camp Bloodbath play out, where at some point the driver, Kurt, turns around and says, somebody wake up Sleeping Beauty. And in the back is Max's mother's character, Nancy, who comes out. And now, come on, there's no way that Max isn't sitting here thinking this whole time that her mom is also in the car too. So when that moment comes up, it's a little silly.
It is a little silly
that she turns around and has that moment. I don't know, honestly, I don't know how else you could have set it up.
Right.
But, you know.
Because she's not the horror movie one who, I don't know, you're right, it is a little bit silly that she wouldn't have thought about it before she got in. But at the same time, it was still kind of sweet, you know? I mean, between, when you see the look on Taissa Farmiga's face, you feel for her, oh, like, my God, what would that be like to not only encounter your deceased mother, but in her youth and at her prime, and to see her in all her glory. I mean,
happy and playful.
Yeah.
Even not because in the beginning of the movie, there was some indication that she was a little beat down, by the fact that she had been typecast or she just couldn't get anything good. I mean, they were coming after that audition and they were joking about it, and they get past it, but you could tell that was a lingering thing. So here was she, when she was doing that part that she was sure was going to rocket her to stardom, it just did it in a whole different way.
Right.
And so they had to have that moment. So of course, I'll forgive that, Yeah. I don't know how else you could have done it, really.
Right. So they all go to the camp, and it's funny because the characters in the movie, like, they don't know really how to interact with these new people, but they're trying to go along with it, and the people from outside of the movie are trying to play along, and there's just so much silly, hilarious dialogue.
They're even using old 80s slang back to the characters in the film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think there's a point where they go up to Kurt because they're thinking about, their first thought is, we'll just take the van and we'll drive out of here. So they go up to Kurt to ask for the keys, and Kurt is throwing all these lame lines at them or whatever. And
oh, what's up, fun bags?
Fun bags, right? Yay, feminism. Listen, we need to borrow your van for a little while. Okay? Yeah.
I don't know. What's in it for me?
How about my friends don't kick your ass?
Oh, this guy's your friend. Yeah, right. You want to go?
No, God,
Tricep
no.
smash.
Okay.
And that would kill you. That's a karate technique.
No, I don't. I've never actually fought anyone before in my life.
Yeah, well, I have so many times. 7 times.
Hey, this is so weird. Do me a favor and just zing me. Just get me.
Fine. How about you go suck a turd?
Ew, writing is so bad.
Like, such corny.
We've lived through this. We understand it. This time and period in films. That was also a neat thing about this movie is it was really not just showing the dichotomy between the now and the then, but also the now and the then in film. And how we've really gotten past a lot of ridiculous stuff that we used to put up with in pop culture. If you go far enough back, there are all these racial stereotypes that used to be so much a part of movies that just embarrass us today. But go up a couple notches, and there are other stereotypes as well that we used to perpetuate in films that you go back and you look at them now and you just shake your head. And go, I can't believe we used to talk like that. I can't believe, people thought that was funny and stuff. And there's so many of those moments in here too that it makes you hyper aware. In some ways, very proud. Like I was like hyper aware, like, wow, look how far we've come in just a couple decades. This guy just like is making boob jokes to the girls, like right in their faces, and they're just laughing at it like it's funny, or they're just brushing it off. I mean, this guy would have been arrested so quickly. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we just
ostracized for sexual assault.
Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of what we expected from those movies, that kind of sexism, exploiting women, and it's not, I think that we're proud of, I think we're more proud of how far we've come, but there's, I don't know if it's nostalgia or what, but like Kurt at one point says to some girl, "Nice legs, what time do they open?" just the most horrible. And the girls in those movies in the 80s would respond to that flirtatiously. Women today would punch that guy in the face, but I don't know. It's a day gone by that we went through, and we can look back now and laugh.
This was a very safe way to go back and laugh at it.
Well, and that's what it seems like. Like, it is making fun of those movies, but it seems like it's people like us making fun of them. It's good natured. We love it too. That's why we want to laugh about it. And it's so good. So they figure out they're in the movie. The first girl to die, they see her going off into the woods. So they know that things are progressing the way that they're supposed to in the movie. They follow her out there, and there's this really hilarious dialogue like, shouldn't we stop this? I can't believe we're just going to sit here and watch these people casually get murdered.
Yeah, which was interesting. As soon as that line came up, obviously, ding, 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 ding. We're thinking back, I don't know about you, but I was thinking back to Funny Games. Yeah. And I thought, wow, are we going to start going here too, where we're talking about the entertainment of violence, and these people are living through this film. They're going to watch these people die, yet they're not going to intervene and do anything, but this is going to bother them so much more. Now, it didn't really go there.
No, not really. I mean, it hinted at it a little bit, but I mean, then that's what they do. They sit there and watch the movie play out. Billy, the Jason-esque killer, comes and he kills this counselor and this hot
like hiker guy
that she met in the woods. And again, it's just such cheesy, like, I mean, he says, like, do you know how to get there? And she's like, a guy like you could go anywhere. Like, and then they just start making out in the woods. So cheesy and stupid and hilarious. And so they're like hiding behind a log. It's almost like cartoonish, like Scooby-Doo or something.
Their heads are just all poking up one right after the other.
And they watch these people get killed, and then Billy turns and sees them. And I think just stands there, and the hot guy, Chris, is like, run! And so they all start running except for Duncan, who says, no, don't worry about it. We're not from the movie, so he doesn't know what to do with us. He'll leave us alone.
Yeah, Duncan thinks he has the rules of this world all figured out.
And it plays out so funny because it seems like he's going to be right. Like, the killer just stands there for a while, and then the killer, like, walks right up to him, and Duncan is clearly really scared, but the killer kind of walks away, and Duncan's like, see, guys, told ya. And then the machete comes flying into frame and slices right through his abdomen, and he falls over, presumably dead.
So we immediately know that there are no rules here. These guys are just as much in it as anybody else, and so that immediately ratchets up the stakes. So it takes us from this observational, laughing at moment into, okay, now we need to really get invested in these characters because they are now in peril. And that's at the point at which, I would say that's the point at which it becomes a horror movie, really.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? I mean, essentially.
Well, but it's even pretty light on it.
Oh, it is.
Because Billy doesn't show up again for quite a while. I mean, there's a lot of interaction between the characters where the folks from outside the movie kind of figure out what's going on and say, you know, we gotta make it to the end of the movie. And the end of the movie is when, you know, I feel like they say that's the rule. Duncan says that before he dies. Movies like this end when the final girl kills the bad guy.
Yeah.
And he tells them who the final girl is. It's this girl named Paula. She's like the hot badass girl. And he's like, she's gonna show up in the next frame.
The next scene, he'll be
right.
Like, what do you say? Like 20 minutes in, she's gonna show up.
And so they decide before Duncan gets killed, we've just got to find this final girl and stick with her until the end, and then everything will be okay.
And knowing the rules of the film, there's also this sense that anybody who has sex is going to die. And this is really spurs the first more or less poignant encounter between Max and her mom's character, Nancy, where Nancy's out there. Nancy's just volunteers that she's going to, oh yeah, I'm totally going to do Kurt tonight.
Kurt told me he wants to do it later.
Wow. Just like that?
I know. And it's like, I can't stay a virgin forever, you know? And he's been with a lot of girls, so he can probably, like, I don't know, help me along.
You shouldn't have sex.
Why?
Because I heard that sex can kill you.
Max, sex isn't anything to be afraid of. I told myself that I was going to lose my virginity this summer, get drunk. Not necessarily in that order.
Please, just trust me.
You sound like my mom.
Yeah. Oh, man.
But it was a very interesting reversal at that point, which kind of continues, where she does end up being the caretaker because she, like a mother over her child, has more information, has more worldly knowledge and experience than her mother's character in the film.
Right.
And so she takes on this role of caretaker for her. And makes sure, just starts to intervene to make sure that she don't take your top off, don't have sex with that guy.
Despite the warning, we see the beginning of the scene that we've already seen from earlier in the theater, where Nancy is she's like getting herself ready, she's spraying perfume, she's lighting candles, and there are so many funny things that they do with how being in a movie and being aware that you're in a movie makes such a difference, because as soon as Nancy starts doing all this stuff, getting ready for sex, you start hearing the which is stolen just directly from Friday the 13th. But the characters from outside the movie can hear it, so they know. Like,
oh crap! So she runs up the stairs.
Right? It's like, no, you can't do this. You can't have sex. And
this movie, more than any of these, I'm in a movie. Maybe not since The Last Action Hero has anybody taken it this far.
Yeah.
I mean, you see titles on the screen that actually exist in their world that they're stepping over.
Right.
And their sound effects are coming in and all that stuff. And I really appreciated that they just went whole hog on it. And after she stops them, they run downstairs. And I'm pretty sure, isn't this the point at which she says, oh, it's Billy Murphy is going to kill us. And Nancy says, Billy Murphy?
You don't mean the Billy Murphy.
And she slips right into her scene, which we've already seen in the
flashback scene,
where she does the flashback.
And it's so funny because she starts telling the story, and like she and all of the other in the movie characters just drift to the couches where they're supposed to be.
All sit down at once to sit down and hear this story. It's blocked. It's totally blocked. Right. And everybody else is looking at them like, what the heck?
And she starts to tell this story, and there's this really cool... I mean, I don't even know. I feel like the budget couldn't have been huge on this. Some of the effects, except for towards the end. Towards the end, they seem to be really cool, but some of them seem to be maybe a little cheap, but believable and fun. Like, when Nancy starts telling the flashback story, it's almost like the celluloid kind of starts to melt from up above and melts down all around them until then they are in black and white, which they comment on. Wait a minute, am I colorblind? Did I have a stroke? What's happening?
It's that liquidy look where you've seen in the movies where we're going back in time, and for some reason long ago somebody decided that that transition needed to look like it was like water,
right?
Like like Wayne's World. And so, yeah, this is like the real-world manifestation of what that would actually be like, I guess. Having the liquid water, kind of everything around you gets blurry. And
wash away.
Yeah.
Is neat. And so then they're in the flashback, and they're in black and white. They see the whole Billy origin story, which was that he was kind of this weird kid that everybody picked on, and the counselors played a prank on him. He locked himself in the outhouse, and they said, I know how to get him out, and they threw like this big thing of firecrackers in there, and that's how he got burned. And then it said like he wanted to cover up his physical scars, so he made a mask, and it's this funny kind of, it's like a Greek tragedy mask.
Yeah. I read with a tiki mask in a way.
Yeah. I read that initially the mask had these great big eyebrows, and everybody on the set referred to it as the Eugene Levy mask. But eventually they trimmed the eyebrows down a little bit. But it's almost comical. It's kind of scary. It's not like something you wouldn't have seen in any of those copycat slasher movies.
Yeah.
And so we get the origin story, and it's very typical of any of the origin stories of those slashers.
It reminded me of... was it called The Burning?
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
There was actually a lot of this movie that reminded me of that. And hopefully I can pinpoint why as we go along.
Well, I don't even remember if I've seen that movie, but I did read that they were inspired by that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but it's...
that's a pretty notorious one anyway.
Right,
so.
well, and, I mean, with the whole camp setting, I mean, there's a clear Friday the 13th reference. They don't really delve so much into the whole Pamela Voorhees thing or anything, but...
Yeah, but there are shades of it, and I guess also shades of The Burning toward the end where they retreat to another location, which is also a little bit of Friday the 13th as well, but...
Well, there's so many homages. I mean, we've got characters named Nancy and Tina. I mean, these are the two main girls from Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, folks, I encourage you to read, if you're interested in this movie, read the trivia on IMDb.
It's like 5 pages long.
Yeah, and there's most of it is gold. I mean, it's so interesting. But so they get the flashback, then they get back. And it's funny, in the flashback, when Billy kills the counselors, blood splashes on Gertie's face, and when they come back in to real time, the blood is still on her face. And so when the story's over, all of the camp counselors look out at her and scream and run out the building like they're going to try to run and get away.
Yeah.
And the out of the movie characters say, you can't get away, because they've already tried. They've run away, and like everything just played on a loop, and they realized there was no escaping it.
Which is also kind of like Friday, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, is it? The Dream Master?
Yeah,
we have that looping sequence.
Yep. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, it's exactly like that. And they try to run away, and this is when people say, well, Paula arrived, and they kind of tried to cling on to her or whatever, and she's hilarious. I mean, she plays that tough girl in the horror movie perfectly.
Which is interesting, because usually the final girl in the horror movie is not the tough girl at all.
Right, it's usually the sweet girl.
Yeah.
And that's who they modeled Nancy after. They modeled Nancy after, I won't be able to think of her name, but the actress's name is Amy something from one of the Friday the 13th movies, maybe 3, blonde. Anyway, not the telekinetic one. I don't know. But anyway, so everybody starts to try to run away, and Chris and Paula jump into Paula's car. Paula's car is like, a muscle car with the license plate Paula 1. I mean, it's so cheesy but funny. And they're driving away, and everybody's like, but wait, she's the final girl. Wait. And she... out of nowhere, right, walking in the road, comes Duncan saying, hey, wait, guys, I'm not dead. And she plows him down, and Chris is like, oh my god, you killed Duncan. And he makes some pervy sex joke with totally, It
was just Kurt, right?
Is it Kurt? Yeah, you're right, Kurt.
Yeah,
sorry,
Kurt.
I'm getting them mixed up. Kurt, the goofy one.
Yeah.
And then, so Paula crashes her car, Kurt goes flying out, and is like totally mangled on the road. And then they're like, Paula, wait, we need you. And the car explodes.
Yes.
Which throws their whole plan out of whack.
Yeah.
So then they have to rethink things.
It's funny, the way Kurt was mangled. Did you ever see It Follows?
Yes, I did.
Remember the opening sequence of that where they're slowly panning across a beach and you see somebody who's mangled in almost that exact same, where their body's just bent backwards and it's like their legs are hanging down?
I don't remember. I just saw it once.
Yeah, it was like pretty much the same thing. I thought that was interesting.
And it's gross. And this is where we kind of start to get more of the horror elements where people are getting killed in different ways.
It's also really comical.
It is.
Like,
Hilariously
almost
comical.
like a cartoon in some ways.
Oh, definitely. And it's a PG-13 movie. And, I read online all the time, comments from horror fans who are not fans of PG-13 horror, and I'm not really sure why that is. We don't get a lot of gore in this movie. We see violence, but there's not a lot of bloodletting. There's not... there's implied sexual content and implied nudity, but you don't see a lot of it.
No.
And you just don't need it. I
No.
mean, we get it. We get that somebody has to show their tits for Billy to arrive, but we don't have to see them.
Yeah.
I feel like they could have gone there and it would have been fine, and maybe it would have been just as funny or maybe more funny. I don't know. But it just didn't feel necessary.
I think what you're, hearing you talk, Craig, that's our modern sensibility. You know what I mean? It's the same thing about the 80s. Like when I was talking earlier, we've kind of gone beyond that now, where that's necessary or that's even really titillating. Yesterday's, our movie is today's PG-13. Right? You can go on the internet and you can find whatever you want. You can find real people getting hacked up on the internet.
Right.
No longer is it
well,
really...
and you can find your fair share of boobs on the internet, too.
Oh, absolutely. So it's no longer entertainment. And so even in these films, I was struck by the fact that, I didn't need to see this at all. It didn't make the movie. Of course, back then, that was a lot of what made the movie, because the movie was pretty crappy otherwise.
Right.
Yeah. I was a fan of that. I liked the idea that I could probably sit down. Actually, I probably couldn't. But this is about as close as it gets to me being able to sit down even with my wife and watching this.
I was wondering that.
Now, there are a few things in here that would have bothered her nonetheless. Like, she can't really even see Chevy Chase take a pratfall.
Gotcha.
That's kind of the level we're dealing with. But just a couple notches above that is all this is.
Yeah, it's a fair PG-13.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, Indiana Jones is, in some cases, more violent than this is.
And I'm cool with it. I think it struck a great balance. I don't have any problem with that at all. At that point, I feel like they make a plan. Duncan had said something about he can only be killed with his own machete or something like that, and everything else will only hurt him. But they set up, like these traps, and it's great. It's a perfect 80s montage. I mean, it's Nancy going around and setting up all these things in her house to trap Freddy.
Yeah.
It's exactly that, and you've got the classic, kind of 80s synth music in the background. And so they set up all this stuff, and the way that they're going to get Billy there is that in the original movie, in the slumber party scene, Tina did a striptease. So up until now, they've had her with oven mitts on and a life vest from the boat to keep her from taking her clothes off so Billy won't come around.
It's like Tina's sole purpose in life, and everything that drives her is the ability to tear at her own clothes.
Yeah.
that is the implication that you get from this, is that Tina's just looking for any and every excuse to take
she's
it off.
Just the sex bot. When Max and Nancy are having the conversation about why Nancy shouldn't have sex, Nancy says, sex isn't bad. Tina's already have it twice today, and she's perfectly normal. And then it cuts to a scene of Nancy grinding up on
Tina.
Chris. Oh yeah, excuse me, Tina grinding up on Chris, the hot guy.
Well, in every scene Tina's in, she's just off in space doing some kind of dance or grinding on a table, or got her Walkman in and she's dancing and.
and there are jokes that Tina's kind of fascinated with Vicki's iPhone, and she finds the Adderall in I guess she's wearing Vicki's jacket. She finds the Adderall, and at first Vicki takes it away for her, says no, not for you, but eventually somehow she gets it back and she takes all of them. So she's just comically hopped up on Adderall, and they're like, oh no, we'll have to change the plan. She's like, no, I got this, I got it. And so they're like, all right, well, let's give her a chance. And she does this striptease.
Like a striptease on Adderall.
Yes. And 2, cherry pie, which, oh, God, you just don't get any more 80s than that.
You really don't.
And it's great. The striptease is so funny. Like, she's so hyped up. And I read that she just totally made that up all on her own. Just ad-libbed the whole thing. And it is hilarious. She's down grinding on the ground. And eventually at the end of it, she pulls up her top. Again, we don't see her boobs, but we know that she's showing her boobs. And at that very moment, out of the fog comes walking Billy. And it's just perfect.
Like a bear to honey right there.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
And of course, it doesn't go as planned.
Right.
He comes in, and she actually ends up running away from him and tripping into one of the traps. So her head goes right into a bear trap. And he comes in, and they release a giant... they shut the door, and at the back of the door, they put all these antlers like spikes on it. They release a giant hammer. That goes into him, and he flies up, very movie style, into the antlers and the spikes. And so you think everything's going to be fine. But then... somebody comes nearby.
The black guy who we've not even mentioned, his name is Blake, who I expected them to play him as the gay guy, because he kind of had that look about him, but they didn't.
No, everybody had that look about him.
True. He kind of had a thing with Gertie, and like, so they kiss, and I think he's trying to go be the hero. He's trying to go get the machete, but Billy wakes up.
The problem is that they kiss. He says, I love you, and she says, I don't care, and she kisses him, and you're thinking, oh, you idiot, this is not the moment. Of course, he goes up to get the machete, and the machete ends up... he wakes up and kind of slashes him with the machete instead, so he falls down. There's a moment between Gertie and him, and then they all run upstairs as he launches himself off of those spikes and goes after them.
Yeah, there was also... Vicky's about to die, which is why I wanted to say this. Again, another one of these moments where it's so self-referential and funny, but at the same time kind of sweet. There's this moment at some point where Gertie and Max and... Vicki are all talking together, and Vicki says, you know, when your mom died, you really retreated into yourself, and I missed you. You know, we were friends. And she said, I know that I've become kind of a... And Gertie says, bitch. She's like, yeah, thanks. She's like, but, you know, I know I did some things that were bad and that I shouldn't have done, but I'm really sorry, and I love you, or I don't know what she says.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes out of nowhere, and it should be silly, and it is, but it feels heartfelt, like it feels true. And she said, Max says, you don't have to die. And she says, I'm the mean girl in an 80s movie. I've made it past the halfway mark. I think I pretty much overstayed my welcome.
Yeah, which is funny and also kind of sad.
Right.
Because she recognizes herself in this movie. You know, it's like you don't recognize yourself until you see it reflected back at you. This is what she's experienced now. And now this girl who we were introduced to in the beginning of the movie and had totally pegged her as that girl, she sees that girl, realizes she's that girl, and now she's contrite about it.
Right. And that's one of the things that I think that this movie does so well, is that it gives you these kind of stock characters, but then it forces you to be sad when they die, because they're not just stock. They're real people that have feelings, and they have more than one level. They're really not flat, and so you want them all to... You know they're not going to, but you want them all to make it, and you're legit sad when they die, as opposed to in the regular where you're almost waiting for it and applauding when it happens.
Yeah. But their whole plot, their whole thing with her is with taking this guy down is just as absurd as in any of these films.
Yeah.
Because as he's chasing after them and they are running upstairs, they're shooting him with flaming arrows from across the room, which none of it makes any sense. No. It's so funny, but so he has all these flaming arrows in his chest, and when they run upstairs, one of their schemes was that he would come into a room and they would dump this bucket of gasoline, I guess, on him to really ignite the arrows. And that's where these two girls, Gertie and Vicki get stuck. For some reason, they're yanking on it. It's not coming down. He comes in, throws a bookshelf on them. They're pinned underneath the bookshelf. And there's that moment where you know they're going to die. They know they're going to die. And escaping out the window, Max and Chris know that they're going to die. And there's nothing they can really do. And Vicki looks up and says, it's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Like, I've accepted my fate. this was destiny, go on and save yourself, and gives them that permission to leave.
Right, and it's sweet. You know, Gertie gets stabbed, and they're both trapped under the thing. Billy takes his machete and stabs through Gertie. And again, it's sad. We like this character.
It really bothered me, actually, like more than it would normally.
Yeah. And like you said, they say it's okay, and
they hold hands. They grab each other's hands, and
then they pull down. They've been trying to pull this bucket. Finally, Vicki gives it one last. The other people, the remaining people are now Chris, Max, and Nancy. They get out the window, and Vicki pulls this bucket down, and the house explodes. And this, I felt like, was where the effects started to get so cool.
Yeah,
the heroes jump out the window, and it goes into slow mo, and Nancy goes, "What's happening?" And Max is like, "It's slow-mo." And then Billy, in just really, I mean, I feel like they kind of tried to do this in some of the later in those franchises of like Friday the 13th and whatnot. He bursts out of the house in flames, and it's this slow-mo shot where he just slowly descends and stomps down right in front of them, and they get up and run, and this whole chase scene is in slow-mo, and he's right behind them, but I don't know, it looked to me like it was really good slow-mo, like they were really running, and it really captured it with him right behind. And oh god, I thought the effect was so cool.
It was really cool, and it really adds this tension to the scene, and the slow-mo tries to give you this tension, but in this case where the slow-mo is this self-aware kind of slow-mo, you're thinking, I don't know, I was just immediately putting myself in their shoes and thinking of the effort it would have taken to like trying really hard to bring your foot forward and this foot forward, and if you're in slow-mo but your mind is going at normal speed, like how are you planning and plotting out every little movement that you make?
Right.
And I was thinking, wow, this is actually kind of an advantage that they have.
Yeah.
If they're aware of the slow-mo and able to plot and plan, and then they get to that pond and they start to leap over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they start to leap over the pond, but of course the guy reaches out and grabs somebody's leg. Chris's leg, right? And that's when Chris gets...
Well, and it breaks out of the slow-mo at that point. That's
right.
And so they're kind of stuck there, and I think it's Max says, "Flashback, say the words." And so Nancy starts telling her story again really, really fast, and it goes into flashback, and they're right back where they were. And this, again, is where they did some really fun things with the lettering, where it says, I don't know how many years later.
It was like a subtitle, the Christmas, 1957,
right.
Or something.
And, like, characters are tripping over the letters, and the letters are, like, spilling out like they're part of the actual environment. Really clever.
And this is the point, and I actually predicted I was wrong, but I thought they were going to go back and actually prevent those firecrackers from going into that outhouse in the first place and erase him, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I was surprised that they didn't even occur to them. They didn't really go there. But what they did do was follow Billy after he emerged from the outhouse and saw that there was some kind of other cabin or some kind of house back in the woods across some lake or whatnot.
Nancy says, "I've never seen this part of camp before," which is always how it is. I mean, in Friday the 13th, Jason has his little shack just right outside the camp, and nobody ever knows about it.
And that gave them information.
Right.
Yes.
And then Billy is also with them in the flashback, and when he catches up with them, then somehow they get out of it, and he's kind of not there anymore. I don't know how
But
that
not
works out.
before Chris gets stabbed, right?
Yeah.
He gets stabbed by Billy, and
with the machete through his abdomen. And Max is like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
She grabs him and takes him to a church.
The old church. The old abandoned church.
That was so funny. At this point, we're really breaking into total surrealness.
Yes.
Like, the movie doesn't even care anymore.
Right.
We are going full whole hog Hollywood here. And she's taken this advantage with the light behind it.
Right, the stained glass.
Through the windows.
Right. Again, I mean, it is the finale of some of those later in the franchise, Friday the 13th movies, and, like, where they don't even bother to really make sense. No. Like, instead of just killing Nancy, Billy throws her over his shoulder and takes her off. And,
which, in a way, you're thinking, if she's supposed to be the final girl, in the movie logic, he's got to do something with her besides kill her.
Right.
So we're gearing up for the final scene, right?
Right.
So it still makes some sense, but you're right. It is absolutely part and parcel any single one of these films.
Yeah. And so when Billy takes Nancy off, Chris is, saying to Max, it's too late for her, she's gone, she's dead. But Max says, no, she's not, I'm going to get her back, I can protect her, I can save her. And I feel like it was before this, it was when they found out about Billy and they were, preparing to protect themselves. That's when we really get that really, really personal and emotional scene between Nancy and her mom, and Max, excuse me. And Nancy is saying, I don't want to die. I had a dream that I would go to college and I would meet a guy and I would have a daughter and I would love her. And it sounds so silly. I mean, I don't think that we can really convey. I mean, it's so sweet.
It comes across so much better on the film than we can describe it.
Right.
But this is when I think they're dipping the arrows in the gasoline, getting ready. This was shortly after the montage, that they had this mother and daughter moment where the mother didn't realize this was her daughter. And the daughter never let on.
Right.
God, your parents must be freaking out right now. I mean, you've been gone for hours. They must be so worried about you.
Not really. Never knew my dad. And my mom's away.
What's she like?
She was so beautiful. And funny. She never knew how awesome she was.
How'd she die?
Never said she died.
You said was, so I just figured. It's okay. You don't have to tell me. Here. I need to have this. It's a friendship bracelet. So you don't forget me.
How could I ever forget you?
It's almost like she senses some sort of connection, but they don't know. And like with us talking about it, it seems like it would be out of place in the movie, but it's not. It just works. They pull back on the comedy a little bit. They take these moments to really get us invested in these characters and care about their relationships. And we have to credit the actresses. It was just such strong performance that it worked.
Yes.
Somewhere else with weaker performances, it felt cheesy, it would have felt forced, but here it just really works.
It really did. And so that sets you up for what's about to come.
Right. Max goes to find Nancy and she finds her tied up in this place, and then Billy shows up and all three of them kind of start fighting. Like, Billy will hit one and the other one will strike back at him, and they're getting some blows in, but really they're kind of getting beat up until finally, Billy doesn't have his machete anymore, but he has this little knife, like a pocket knife, and he stabs Max with it. I don't remember how this happened. Like, I know that Nancy, like, kind of took him out a little bit somehow with the machete, like he was out of commission for a minute, and they were able to run back to the church, right?
Uh-huh.
That's where they have this conversation where Max finally confesses. Nancy says, it's okay, you're not going to die. I'm going to be the final girl. I'm not just going to be the shy girl with the clipboard and the guitar anymore, which is kind of what she's been lamenting this whole time, that she was just the shy girl with the clipboard and the guitar.
Well, because somebody said that outright.
Yeah, Vicki, I think, did. Mm-hmm. She said, you can't be the final girl. She's like, I can do this. You're still alive. All I have to do is go out and die, and you guys can go home. And that's when Max confesses the truth.
No, Mom, you belong at home with me. Look, your name is Amanda Cartwright, and you live in Encino, and you love Betty Davis Eyes and Mel's Diner, and you wanted to be the biggest movie star more than anything in the world. And you had a daughter. You have a daughter. I'm not going back without you.
And that's such a poignant moment because that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what has to happen, really. Because eventually they have to get back to the real world, and her mother is still going to be dead. And throughout this whole film, even the other character just saying, look, she's not your mom.
She's not your mom.
You're holding on to this, but she's not. And in a way, she knows it, but she's just really not ready to let it go.
Well, and I really like that the movie played it that way. I really didn't think for a minute that Nancy was going to get out of it, that she was going to get to come back. It wouldn't have made sense because even within the context of the movie, even when Max tells her the truth, it's not as though, oh, realization, I'm your mom. no, I am this character that your mom played, but they've established this bond so that it almost feels motherly.
Yeah.
And it's really sweet. And so and again, the effects here are so cool. It's this really wide shot of this, the church in the far right frame, and then just this big open space with this crazy supernatural storm, all pink and purple and lightning. And Nancy goes out, and her song starts playing again. The Betty Davis Eyes song starts playing again. And she walks out, and she starts kind of doing a little striptease, but she's doing it for Max, who is sitting back in the church watching all of this. And so it's not sexy, it's cute, it's playful. It's like when they were in the car.
Yep, it's an exact replica of what they were doing in the car, except now she's going to die.
Right.
And she's willingly sacrificing himself for her daughter. And there are just so many emotional subtext. I mean, it just everything leading up to this point set you up for this point, and it pulled the right strings, and I was just like freaking bawling.
I know.
I couldn't handle it. I had a hard time, and because it really did. She's got to watch her mother die again, but she's doing it for her so she can live on. Wow. And
it's not like you don't want it to happen. Like, you appreciate the heroic nature of it, and it's so sweet. And so she does. She sees Billy coming. Billy's walking up behind her. She turns away. Nancy turns away and just looks at her daughter and her movie daughter, whatever, and just smiles like, it's all right. It's okay. And Billy's just slowly coming up behind her. At the very last second, Max looks away, and it pulls back from a close shot back to that really wide shot, and we see Billy just nail her, right through the back, and her back arches, and she falls forward off the ground and kind of slides off of his knife. And it almost feels tragic, It
really does.
It feels like Greek tragedy or something.
It does, and all the more power to them that this would happen in this absurd Hollywood atmosphere.
Yeah.
With the lightning going and the red sky and then shadow and silhouette and whatnot. And you never feel this way in these horror films when that scene is happening.
Yeah.
But boy, it just tugs at you.
Yeah, it's a gut punch.
Yeah.
Well, now, since she's the final girl, Max recovers her strength, and she gets up, and she and Billy have this awesome fight to the end. I mean, it's exactly what you want for the final battle. It's big. Billy is kicking her and punching her, and she's going flying like 20 feet back in the air, scooting along the ground when she lands, but always getting back up and coming right back for more. And eventually he throws his knife, and there's a cool slow-mo shot where she goes down on her knees and leans back, and it flies right over.
It's like a Matrix type sequence there.
And she jumps up and takes the machete and slices him in the leg, and then slices his arm, and then slices his head off. And then, just like in the 80s movies, now it's morning.
She wakes up,
and the birds are singing.
And for a split second when she woke up, because this was a flash, sort of a throwback to the earliest scene when she woke up in the film, I thought, don't tell me she's going to wake up in the woods by the road and this car is going to come by again.
Yeah, I was worried about it.
Because you're just seeing her eyes, and she opens up, and it's exactly like it is when that happens earlier in the film. But she's in a hospital.
Well, before the hospital, the credits start to roll.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. The credits start to roll in the background. And Chris, who is apparently still alive despite his injuries, comes out, and they embrace, and they're watching the credits roll. And then when the credits are done, it's like the film strip runs out on the projector, and they're kind of stuck in that, and they're holding one another, and then it goes to bright white, and then she wakes up in the hospital.
And that's my second criticism of the film. All right, artistically, that worked really well.
It looked cool.
Realistically, nobody projects film anymore. In the theater that they were watching this movie, and I just gotta say, I doubt they were projecting a film print of this film.
Right.
But okay, that's fine. That was the stupidly enough, that was actually going through my mind when we watched that bit. But it was so cool. Yeah, the movie ended. And again, like I said earlier, this movie absolutely commits to being a film, them being inside of a film.
Mm-hmm.
And that credit sequence, I've never seen anything like that in any of these.
It was really neat. You know, it reminded me, tonally, the whole movie reminded me a little bit of Cabin in the Woods, but even more pushing for the comedy. And Cabin in the Woods is pretty graphic and gross, and they stay away from that, but the tone was kind of there, kind of that self-aware idea. But they wake up in the hospital, and everybody's okay. Yes, they suffered injuries. Duncan shows them that he's got this huge scar all around his abdomen.
I thought it would be, it's all a dream kind of thing. And he's like, nope, it really happened. Here's my machete scar.
Yeah, which seems ridiculous, but that, you know, they're all there, they're all okay. But then you hear something out in the hallway. And it's this doctor talking to a nurse like, come on, we've got time. And, like, it's clearly cheese, like sex cheese. And then they look around and they see a Rubik's Cube and a can of Tab. And
gremlin on the doll.
And they realize that they are now in the sequel, Camp Bloodbath 2. I don't remember what the rest of the title was. And Billy comes flying through the window and Max grabs her IV pole to, like, use as a weapon, and that's where it cuts out. And it's brilliant. So funny.
There's no better way to end this movie.
Yeah.
There's no better way.
Oh, and I would watch that sequel, too.
I would, too. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. This, you know what? As much as this movie really, really, really tugged at my heartstrings, I get online and I'm looking through the credits and through the trivia. As I'm like, who directed this? What else has he done? Who wrote this? What else have they done? One of the writers, it's credited to two writers. One of them is a guy named Joshua John Miller. Mm-hmm. And this person has been an actor in a couple... He was an actor in Near Dark and a couple other horror films in the 80s. But it's said that apparently his father is Jason Miller, who is Father Karras in The Exorcist. Mm-hmm. And that he conceived this film and co-wrote it as a way of coping with his own father's death.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's got so much heart, and like I said, I'm so glad that the people behind it. I think that it, you know, after it was made, they had a difficult time getting it distributed because they wanted to keep it the way that it was. They wanted to keep the heart of it, and eventually Sony picked it up and liked it. They toned it down a little bit because they wanted a PG-13, but I'm so glad. See, honestly, like you said, I mean, the balance is one thing, but the heart of it is really what gets you. And I think that's why I've wanted to do this for so long.
Oh my god. This is my favorite movie of 2016. Yeah. I was just, from beginning to end, just enraptured, enthralled. It took me everywhere. It took me places I didn't expect to go. And by the end, I'm going to be thinking about it for a long time. I'll be watching it again. I'll try to get Vic to watch it with me.
I think she'll like it.
She would love it if I just tell her when to close her eyes.
Right.
I got to watch it a couple more times so that I know when she needs to close her eyes. But
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I have a really hard time getting my partner to watch horror movies with me too.
Yeah.
But he will concede every once in a while. And this is one where we watched it together, and at the end he wasn't like, yeah, whatever. Like,
really?
Yeah. No, he really enjoyed it too.
Did he cry too? Can you?
He's not so much of a crier.
Oh, okay.
I definitely cried.
I cry like almost everything. I like freaking cry at the right commercial. So I'm a bad judge of this. But, you know, I also wonder, because I had a similar experience. I might have talked about this before, showing my dad Cabin in the Woods. Mm-hmm. Okay? My dad's not really into horror. We watched a few horror movies growing up, mostly as a concession to me, but he doesn't know the tropes. He doesn't know the things. And I watched Cabin in the Woods thinking that he would really appreciate and enjoy it. But in the end, I realized that because he didn't know the tropes, because he didn't understand all that, he really didn't get the comedy, or he didn't get the thematic thread of the film, and that caused him to not like it at all. And it wasn't until afterwards we had this discussion where I explained everything to him, he appreciated it more. But the movie, he was like, why'd you show me this gory movie? You know, I hate gory movies where people are getting cut up and people are hurting each other, and that's exactly what this was. And if you're not familiar with horror films, that's what you would, of course, think. Mm-hmm. And it didn't occur to me until I showed that to him that he didn't have the context. So my question for you is, do you think this movie requires that advanced knowledge?
I think that being familiar with those old 80s slashers will make you enjoy this movie even more. But I don't know. I just think it's so funny. Even if you don't... I don't know. I mean, what horror fan isn't at least familiar with that type of movie?
Well, and a person who's not a horror fan should still be familiar because you still have...
I mean, it's so prevalent in pop culture.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't seen the movies, I mean, you kind of get... I don't know. I think you're right. If it... Would non-horror fans like it? Maybe, because it is funny. But I really think that it's for horror fans. You know, it's for people who have grown up with these types of movies, and then you just get more on top of that. You get the comedy and you get the heart on top of that.
Well, and that thematic thread really about this girl and her relationship with her mom should cut through. It really doesn't matter the genre, whether
I agree.
or not you're familiar with these tropes that they're making fun of. And it's just a wrapping around the core of the film, which should be, I don't know, I mean... My dad would cry at this.
Well, and if you're a fan of either of these actresses, which again, I am a huge fan of both of these actresses, Taissa Farmiga and, Malin Ackerman, huge fans. If you're fans of theirs, you've got to see this movie. It's so funny, and they are so good in it.
Well, and the guy who played Kurt, do you know who he is?
Yeah, the guy who played Kurt, his name's Adam Devine. He's a musical theater guy. He was in both Pitch Perfect movies, and he was hilarious, and he's a hilarious guy.
He seems to be, yeah.
He did a stint, I believe, in the Book of Mormon on Broadway. He's really funny. He's very talented. I mean, the guy can sing too. He's a really talented guy, and he's hilarious in this movie.
He is, and that's what, you know, this movie more than any other, I think, really, if what you said earlier about at the very end after the credits where we got the outtakes and things, this movie needed it.
Yeah.
It's a movie about movies, it's about people making movies, it's about these things. The outtakes made sense, but also the outtakes thematically totally worked with the film.
Oh my gosh, and they were so funny, and it was so nice to just be able to laugh and laugh and laugh at the end. I'm so glad they include... I'm a fan of outtakes anyway. You know, they're silly and fun, but here... what I really appreciated about them is you could really just tell that everybody was having so much fun making this movie. It made me jealous. Like, oh God, to have been a part of this, how much fun would that have been?
This is the movie I wish I had made.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really it. Oh.
It's good. All right, well, if you've made it this long with us gushing throughout this movie, thank you. We appreciate you listening. If you like our stuff, we've got a whole bunch of back episodes on Stitcher and iTunes. We're on Facebook. We'd love to hear your feedback. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's anything that you would like us to watch and talk about. But until then, I'm Craig.
And I'm Todd.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.